Guys, this morning we're at the most magical place on earth, and no, not the one with the giant rat. We're at Copart Salvage Auction to go Corvette shopping. There's so many smashed up vets here in Dallas, Texas that I almost don't know where to start.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
You just happen to pick the one you're standing next to.
Work smart, not hard, Carrington.
It's laziness, not logic. All right. I do have to say, though, this one looked better from the other side. This is something. And, yeah, that used to hold all the oil in the engine. So if you've ever wondered what the bottom inside of a dry sump oil tank looks like, here you go. Not the way I really wanted to find that out, but, hey, it is what it is. This is, yeah, that's where the ECU used to go. This all plugged into a computer at some point.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Now, this is a really extreme example, but every time I see a Corvette that has damage in this passenger corner, somewhere around where that ECU sits, I always get nervous. Sometimes it's obvious like this, sometimes the wires are clipped, sometimes the ECU's just hit, but it's always something to look out for on these cars.
And if everything we just talked about didn't scare you on this car enough, look at the aluminum frame. That is a lot of damage that's going to be very hard to fix.
Even at first glance, I think there's about 10 different reasons that this one's a parts car. The aluminum frame, as Dalt just said, the aluminum frame up here, it just deconstructed. That weld is supposed to be there. It looks like it got hit, broke, and maybe moved forward. This upper control arm, this is one mount. That one's still intact. This is the other mount. The bolts are clear broken off in the frame. That is wild. That's where the strut used, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. That's part of the strut. There's part of the control arm. This whole front passenger suspension is absolutely destroyed. But if there's a silver lining here, it's that the engine, well, I was about to say the engine didn't get hit, but it clearly did get hit. But hey, that's just a cosmetic cover. The engine itself, I think, looks untouched. There's the rest of the dry sump oil tank, I guess.
That's not where that goes.
So I know based on what we've seen so far up there, it looks pretty rough, but it gets a little better. In this case, I guess a lot better. The rear end of the car, other than this one little hole, it's untouched. It's got a set of aftermarket wheels that somewhat survived. They're curved, but let's be honest, that's the least of our concerns on a car like this. The brakes, they're just fine. The interior, oh my God. Well, I didn't see that prior. The interior is just missing. There's a dashboard, a steering wheel with a blown airbag, and not much else. It does look like a lot of that missing stuff's in the hatch area, but I'm still not positive why it's all removed. Now, obviously, we didn't come all the way out here to Texas just to look at parts cars. I really want to fix a C7 ZR1, Z06, maybe even a Grand Sport, because we're looking at one of those a little bit later. But this one, 100% a parts car.
Up front, we have a good headlight here. The fender looks usable, but it does have a little bit of damage, and we do have what appears to be a good suspension corner with caliper intact. This car, unfortunately, didn't come with the carbon ceramic option, but that doesn't mean that the suspension corner doesn't have value.
And from that standpoint, there is a lot of value here. The engine, that's like $15,000. Some of these good front end parts, like the headlight, that's worth a ton of money. These cars aren't cheap. They're not cheap to rebuild. The parts are expensive. So it wouldn't hurt if we bought a parts car and then bought one to fix. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's actually a great idea. And on this one in particular, if we bought this and then found another one that had a bunch of rear end damage, we could really just use the entire back half of this car to fix that one. Now, with that idea in mind, the Z06 next to it, at least from what I can see so far, it looks like a fixer, and it looks like it's optioned right. First thing I noticed, the carbon ceramic brakes, the stuff that was missing off the gray car, well, the red one has it.
You might as well start with a better car. Carbon ceramics, I see comp seats in the inside, and the red color, let's be honest, it's a better color for a Corvette.
Boomers. Looks normal to me.
Well, it doesn't have half the frame rail ripped off.
And that's progress. The front end of this one in general just looks really nice. You know when the insurance company takes the time to mark this little crack in the fender liner and a couple cut wires that you're probably not in for that bad of a repair? There really looks to be not much damage at all in the front. You see that little air duct, I guess? It sits on the lower control arm. I guess it's an aerodynamic part. That's cracked. Even this lower radiator bracket, which is notorious for breaking on these. You break these just by looking at them. That's in perfect shape. the lower radiators, everything on this looks perfectly fine. This, from the front end at least, we haven't got to the back, looks like a really easy fix. On this one, just like the gray one, the engine is completely untouched. There's not even anything that got bunched up or pushed around it. I have no doubt whatsoever that this engine would be perfectly fine. Yeah, as far as I can tell, it looks perfectly fine. A lot of times when these cars get hit down low, they are aluminum frames, so they do break pretty easily. All this stuff will get shoved up into the engine. It doesn't always cause a major issue, but it's certainly not comforting when you're about to spend $30,000+ on a wrecked Z06. I think the rear shocks might be leaking. It's just a hunch, a professional opinion.
There's a lot of insurance markings on this side, but nothing that looks overly terrifying as far as a repair standpoint. This obviously took a very, very heavy impact, and you can tell by the amount of camber, there's probably going to be some suspension damage in there that you're going to have to deal with. But aside from that, the entire tub over here on this side looks to be intact. The one main area that is very concerning is that this lower rocker piece appears broken. This is one giant piece, and it's a very, very time-intensive thing to replace.
Yeah, you can see up even a little further. There's a crack, there's a crack. He's right about this being a really hard piece to replace, but it's not that bad to repair. With that crack and those cracks, if I bought this car, I'm 100% fiberglassing that back together. I'm not replacing the whole thing.
That might very well be the only fiberglass repair.
I didn't like the way you just said that.
Yeah, that's not the only fiberglass repair. You're definitely gonna have to attend to that as well.
All right, so hear me out here. Yeah, that's cracked. Yeah, there's a hole there. That's cracked. The cooler, nah, I'm not worried about that. It's probably $100. All this stuff, it's not that hard to fix. It'd be really expensive by insurance standards to replace, but let's be honest, none of us are doing that, right? And one other key thing that's almost an automatic total every time on these aluminum chassis cars, when the frame gets even a ding in it. Now, I do think this replace that the insurance company drew was referring to the muffler hanger and not the frame rail, but I have seen C6 Corvettes get one little dent in them, they total it automatically. And then somebody like you or I buys it, throws a bumper right over that dented frame and never thinks about it again.
I'm actually gonna have to agree with Carrington on this one. The more I look around it, the panels that are still on the car, the gaps are all really, really good on this one. I don't think too much shifted around.
The roofs on these cars are removable. It is cool, I guess, but a lot of times when they get hit hard, the roof will be up over the halo or the other way around. It's never a good sign when that happens, but this one perfectly straight all the way across. Now, on the inside, well, give us a second. As I was saying, on the inside, now it is a shame that the windows got left down on this car. I think we'll go ahead and roll them up while we're here. The interior, it's a bit dirty, and I mean really dirty. Otherwise though, no blown airbags. It looks pretty decent. The most important thing, the competition seats. These things are sick. Sure, they're the wrong color. They'd be 10 times better if they were red. But what's that old saying? Beggars can't be pickers or something like that?
Choosers, Carrington. Beggars can't be choosers.
Same thing. Now, one other thing back here that is slightly concerning, confusing, I don't know how to put it. There's a fifth wheel in the car. That probably shouldn't be here. Is that a Camaro wheel?
We know what wheel
that's
that
a Camaro wheel.
That is definitely a 5th gen Camaro wheel, which makes me wonder what the circumstances were regarding the accident of this car.
Not only is it a Camaro wheel, it's a Camaro wheel that something got inside of, and the brake caliper bolt possibly broke, a rock got wedged in. It has rub marks all the way around. That's funny.
I'm gonna guess this is a somewhat local car and somebody knows the story on this car. If you do, we'd love to hear it.
Now, the Camaro wheel's not the only parts in here. We have that other headlight that is definitely damaged, but we can probably sell this to recoup a few bucks if we decide to rebuild the car. The taillight, that's junk. See, it was junk before I dropped it. It's still junk now. I didn't hurt it. Pretty much every part that was missing from this car is either in the trunk or on this pallet that came with the car. You have the front bumper, the rear bumper. We're not gonna unwrap this because it looks really tedious and I don't want to make the Copart guys wrap it all back up. So who knows if it's in good shape, but at least it's there. Hey, we're never gonna complain about extra parts coming with a car from Salvage auction. We got power on it now. There's no damage to the front end. It still has coolant, still has oil. Give it a shot.
Fire it up, dog.
Fire it up, dog. Wow, engine. That sounds healthy. It sounds really quiet for an LT. These things are direct injected, so a lot of times they'll be kind of clicky, kind of rattly. This one sounds awesome. The exhaust sounds weak though. You got to put it in sport mode. Turn that knob, I think. And one more. There we go. There we go.
Much better. This is a salvage auction after all and not a used car lot, so you don't get that full tank of fuel along with it, but we have excellent oil pressure. The engine appears to be pulling great vacuum. 40,000 miles on it. Really the only thing that is coming to my mind to keep me from peer pressuring Carrington into rebuilding this is the automatic transmission.
We can make an auto car, a drag car, it'd be fun.
TH400 or Power Glide, that's totally acceptable automatic.
Give her a hit before she runs out of gas.
I'm trying my hardest, but this window doesn't appear to roll up. Another thing to add to Carrington's list as far as things he's going to need to attend to when we inevitably buy this to rebuild it.
For some reason, it's really easy for him to spend my money. So the window's not gonna roll up. I have a feeling that if this thing sits here for, I don't know, another month, 2 months possibly before it runs for auction, this interior is gonna be even more beat, and it's already kind of beat for a 40,000 mile car. So I'll definitely have to take that into account when I decide how much I want to pay for it.
The Bluetti portable power stations, whether you're at the salvage auction, on the racetrack, or at the job site, portable power has never been more important. We got plenty of power here around the shop, but that doesn't mean that we can't find some practical applications for the Bluetti power station. Wirelessly charging your phone while powering your dyno fans. Brewing your favorite cup of coffee while charging your best shop light. The point is, the Bluetti power stations are versatile, they're portable, and best of all, they're on sale for Black Friday. With eco-friendly solar charging options and AC and DC inputs, as well as any output that you can possibly desire to power whatever you may need. This particular unit's the Bluetti AC180 portable power station. Now, through the end of November, it's more than 50% off. So let's play out another scenario with it. You're at the racetrack, you just finished up your session or your pass, the car needs maintenance, but your camera phone needs a charge, the tire inflator's running low, your cell phone's running on empty, your favorite impact battery is of course drained, your flashlight needs a charge, and one of your children happens to be a Halloween enthusiast with a particular fascination for Jack Skellington and has to take a 4-foot blow up everywhere you go. But yeah, Bluetti's got that covered. You don't need some noisy, smelly generator anymore. The Bluetti power stations can meet your power needs in an eco-friendly manner at a massive discount right now for Black Friday. So follow the link down in the description below, head on over to Bluetti's website and pick up a power station that's gonna meet your needs. Now, let's see what else we can find here at the salvage auction.
Now, as much as I want to be a C7 guy in the future, I'm a C6 guy at heart. Partly because it's all I can afford, partly because they're really awesome cars. So a white C6, which are really rare, by the way. I'm hoping at least that this one's a rebuilder, because I'd hate to see a white one get parted out. It got smashed on this door, and I mean smash. The rocker's bent in. We're definitely not going to be able to open this door. My only concern is behind this rocker panel, there's a steel frame rail. That got bashed in. It's a really tough fix. First clue, the targa top, just like on the Z06 we just looked at, it's straight. So that's a good sign. It's not folded in half. The front side, that butts up perfectly fine all the way across. That's straight. So we're looking good so far, though. That doesn't really say much. Now, the front end of this car is, even by C6 standards, which are old these days, beat. This has to be a high mileage car. Either that or got a really poor repaint at some point. The front bumper's not damaged, it just needs a full respray. It does have the cheap Morimoto knockoff headlights. This is pretty rough. Much rougher than I expected when I was coming up from behind. Finger width gaps aren't standard on Corvettes, and this one's so bad I can fit my fat thumb in it. See under the hood. There's not a whole lot of stock C6s rolling around anymore, but this is one of them, I guess. It's filthy though, absolutely disgusting, filthy engine bay. But again, beggars, choosers, that whole thing. As for the suspension, all that looks pretty much untouched. The wheels are in decent shape. The back side of the car, just like the front, it's not damaged per se, it's just really beat. This whole thing's just a rough car, but that's okay. Hopefully it's priced accordingly. Now on the inside, I hadn't looked in here yet, but I can see right past the red interior, which is wildly expensive on these cars. In red interior, white exterior, there's not many better color combos. Wow. It is automatic, so I guess that's kind of a letdown. But the interior, so sick. And probably more importantly, for as bad a condition as the exterior is in, this looks really nice. Somebody kept up on the interior really well. The carbon fiber center console. Let's see, do we have power? We do not.
Now, while Carrington's hooking up the jump box, I'm going to be a little bit more critical on this interior because I used to do upholstery for a living. So I have an eye for some of the...
Oops. Wow.
The answer's no, Carrington. I can't do anything about it.
You got an Advil? Yeah, apparently there's some electrical issues here. The windshield wipers, they're doing their thing, or at least trying to. Even with the key in the slot over there, it doesn't power on. We can't even get a mileage. So maybe there's some electrical issues with this car, or I suppose the right way to phrase that is definitely there's some electrical issues with this car.
Well, it doesn't always go to plan. What I was starting to say is that some interior panels have been replaced on this, and that's completely overshadowed by the fact that you can't even get its power off.
If I had to guess what would cause this electrical issue, the body control module, it is down on the floor right under the glove box. And don't get me wrong, this should not have hit those wires in any way, shape, or form, but there's at least a decent chance that some harness got pinched, cut when that door got pushed in that hard. Pretty much every C6 rebuild I've done to date has been cake. I mean cake, really easy, like $1,000 or less in parts. In fact, almost all of them look like that black one right there. This one, though, is not that. It's a much better spec, but it's definitely going to be a tougher repair. If we escape the frame damage there, we have to hunt down the electrical issues. If we fix the electrical issues, we have to paint pretty much the whole car. This one, I'm not super hyped on.
It doesn't run. It's relatively beat. It's giving me these deja vu types of feelings about the first car that we did, which means that we need to show them something in a lot better shape.
I'd honestly rather buy a Mustang than this.
I don't know about that.
Now, for as rough as the white one down there looks, this Grand Sport, it truly looks like nothing's wrong with it, but there is a catch, and it's a pretty big one.
Well, it has no power. It has electric door locks, and I don't see a key inside. So we're kind of out of luck on this one.
We'll call it a mystery vet. I'm not going to say it's ideal conditions, but it is at least fun. We're only going to be able to judge this car based on what we can see on the exterior and by looking through the windshield. Or doors, I suppose. We can't pop the hood. We can try to glance under it. This one we're gonna really have to use our brains on, and unfortunately, that's not what we do best here at Scrap Life Garage. What do you see under there?
I see absolutely nothing. The primary damage on this car is listed as undercarriage damage. I see absolutely nothing from back here. Only thing that's jumping out to me is on the floor on the other side, right past my finger there, basically right in line with Carrington's face right now. It looks like there might be some damage to the actual floorboard.
You're right. Yeah, there's just a little bit of floor damage there, and it might be a hole, and that seems like a problem. I totally understand why an insurance company would total this thing, pun intended. But again, I don't really think it matters. Just don't drive it in the rain, deal with the hole in the floor, you got yourself a cheap vet.
A cheap vet is certainly never a problem. This is a 2012, so it has the nicer steering wheel. It has the carbon fiber console. And if you look past the reflection of that idiot right there, you can see that this has the updated seats as well with the extra shoulder bolstering.
I like the idea of this car. It's ultra clean, even down to the brand new Michelin tires. I'm sure it's low mileage, but the problem with that, everybody else is gonna like the idea of it too. And that means, of course, it's probably gonna pull a ton of money, more than I'd wanna pay for it at least. And while this one might not have the same issues as some of the other ones we've looked at, it definitely has issues of the stolen variety.
Well, they left us the supercharger, which is always a bonus on one of these. And the engine compartment, everything looks to be in order, but on the exterior of the car, everything else looks to be out of order. We have damage to the headlight. We have some pretty heavy damage to the bumper skin here. You can see this was rubbed up against something, and there's a nice little gouge out of the fender down low. On a positive note, the rocker panel looks to be okay. This thing is sealed up. The window is there. It's just not rolled up, and we have a giant question mark as to why the roof on this looks like it is orange, even though it does have carbon fiber.
Counterpoint though, compared to the other C7s we just looked at, this is nothing. Given the context clues on this one, it really just looks like somebody joyrode this thing. It's not here because it was wrecked. That stuff's all really minor. It's here because it was stolen. And considering how lucky I got recently on a stolen car, that gray Hellcat, I'm definitely down to buy another one. And this one, red interior, it's automatic. It is, I believe, the 3LZ, I think it's called, with the stitched dashboard. So it has everything you'd want except carbon ceramic brakes and comp seats. Honestly though, I'm digging this one. This is about as nice of a C7 as you could want. Yeah, it's kind of raggedy, but hey, we're at Salvage auction after all.
Aside from this damage and the wheel damage, this side of the car at the back end and the entire rear bumper section appears to be in pretty good shape. Whatever they were, you know, joyriding around, they managed not to back into anything.
We are not having the best luck. It says ready for remote 2. I did see that it has 25,000 miles, which is cool, but yeah, we're not gonna be able to start this one either. You know, when we pull up to a Copart lot with a brand new Grand Sport in the best color ever, Vipers, a R35 GTR over there, but we start with the C5, it's gonna be a good one. Should we just cut to the chase and pop the hood right off the bat? I mean, why wait, right? Okay, well.
Don't worry, I'll take care of it.
Not what I meant by pop the hood, but hey. Wow, that's actually kind of impressive. I didn't expect that. Fast intake manifold. This is the first clue that I had when I was looking at pictures before I got here that it was pretty heavily modded, at least hopefully. We've got a Veraram intake, a very dusty Veraram intake.
I might butcher the pronunciation on this, but it's a Miser water pump, but it's not an electric pump like you see on a lot of race cars. It's still belt driven, but it is beautiful, nicely anodized. It looks like it might be billet.
And way down there, it's really hard to see, but it has an aftermarket crank pulley on it as well. Given the water pump, it's an almost certainty that this thing's been cammed. And yeah, I just saw it at the same time. We got a good old-fashioned, yeah, is that nitrous?
No, it looks like
line lock.
Like
Yeah, I thought it was a nitrous solenoid at first.
Definitely line lock solenoid, which I have to imagine that this thing was raced pretty heavily.
As it should be. Let's see, on the inside of this thing, and yes, I have already scoped this out. This is the best part about these cars. Red interior, especially when they're in this condition. Now, given how hard this thing's hit, it's almost certainly a parts car. A lot of nice parts up in the engine bay, but the red interior is probably my favorite thing to find on a C5. This lower dash panel, the glove box over there, the seats, even if they have a little bit of damage like this, they're insanely expensive. This is $500 or $600. The door panels as a pair, if they're not lifting, which they're not, they're like $1,000, $1,500.
The glove box is in really good shape. Another big dollar item from this interior. I'm also seeing more mods. This looks like an MGW shifter.
Gotta be.
Have to imagine this is what controls that line lock setup.
With this heavy hit up front, it does have some electrical damage, so we can't power the thing up. But the climate control, the radio, if those things work, if the screen functions properly, they're worth a ton of money too.
I want it. This has Lisi Parts car written all over it.
110%. So much of this stuff is just old and broken these days. The C5 market over the past 5 years, straight up, especially the hard to find interior stuff. Everything that's brittle, everything that's easy to break, it's worth so much now. Now, I do suppose because I love these things so much as parts cars, I kind of jumped the gun on calling it a parts car, but I think that's gonna hold up once we start looking at the damage. This is the driver frame rail. It's supposed to be straight like a frame rail would be. It is, well, not straight. I'd give that about a 45-degree angle. The headlight, the pop-up headlight, it's gone. It's completely missing. I think that's a piece of the bracket that used to hold it. The front suspension, trashed. The wheel, I think those are C6 Corvette replica wheels, which actually look pretty cool in the car, or at least they did.
That side looks worse at first glance, but this side is equally as scary. There is a massive kink in the frame rail, almost back to where the strut ties in. The tub here is completely ripped away. There's equally as much damage on this side as there is on that side.
And it's fairly common to see these cars with tub damage, a part broken off, but to see them completely separated like this, that is next level. The ECU also sits back here. It is somewhat intact. The wires don't look broken. So there is a chance that if we fixed all the other wiring damage on this car, or took the engine out to put in something else, we could use the stock harness, we could start it without any issue. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not all bad on the exterior. The backside of it is in really nice shape, actually. The rear quarter, that survived, though it's not really worth much money. This lower brake duct, these are Z06 specific. They're actually worth a good bit of money, more than the quarter, in fact. We do have a Borla exhaust, and while usually this is a good thing, on this particular car, it's actually kind of a downgrade.
C5 Z06s come with a OEM titanium exhaust. They are a great upgrade for anybody that has a non-Z06. They sell for great money, and they sell very quickly.
It's one of the only times you can upgrade your exhaust to something like this Borla and add weight to the car. Now, while we're back here on the rear end, probably the most important part, no, it's not the Borla exhaust, the trans and diff. They're Z06 specific. They're a really highly desired upgrade for the base cars. Unfortunately, can't get a real good look at it, but based on the way the car is damaged, I suspect they're fine. And if we do part it out, which at this point I think it's fair to call this a parts car, we've looked it over enough now, that's like $3,000, $3,500. I think that's supposed to technically go over that part. Close enough, right?
She ain't going nowhere.
Now the question with this Z06, as is the case with pretty much every car we see at auction, what's it gonna sell for? And I probably shouldn't be saying this, but there's really nothing we won't pay for C5 Z06s. As they get more rare, as the parts get more expensive, the price goes up. But every time we stretch the budget up, $10, $12 plus $1,000 on a car that looks like this, I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but we do well on them every time. Now, as much as I do love those things, let's go ahead and jump forward to the new hotness, I guess, if you will. The last of the front engine Corvettes, the C7 Grand Sport. And first off, we have to talk about this color. I think it's called Ceramic Matrix Gray, and it might not be doing it justice here in the Texas clouds, but it is beautiful. It's like a white slash blue slash light gray. Now, me personally, I've always wanted one of these. I haven't went out and just bought a C7 because they're really expensive. So if I'm gonna get one, it's gonna have to be something from Salvage auction like this one. And luckily, at least at first glance, if we just block out that part right there, it looks like a really nice rebuild candidate. It's certainly much better than that one over there on the rebuild front. Now that's not really impressive.
What is impressive is the fact that all of these Grand Sports come with a dry sump oiling system. Even the automatics on the C6s, only certain year manuals came with it.
Dry sump, always a plus, but the thing we're really missing under here, the blower, being that it's not a Z06, it's a Grand Sport, which still has a Z06 body just like they did in the C6 body styles, it just feels empty without a blower.
You can just have Fernando in the passenger seat making the blower noises for you.
Queen, queen, right? Actually, not a bad idea. Now, from what I understand, though, I'm not a big C7 expert because, again, haven't owned one to date. I think the LT4 blowers are pretty easy swap on these cars if you decided to go that route instead of an aftermarket blower.
Or turbos.
Or both.
With nitrous.
And a power glide in the back, being that the rear is already damaged.
4-link setup will be nice.
I'm out at this point. I have nothing else.
I had ammo for days, Carrington. I was going 25-3 chassis, completely back half it, carbon fiber wheel tubs. We're building a race car out of this thing.
Look, this thing's too nice to build a race car. I kind of, and by kind of I mean really want this thing is somewhat of a daily driver, which of course in a matter of weeks I would ruin by doing a blower, turbos, nitro, you know, all that stuff. Either way, I want it. Now, as for what I'd be in for if I did buy this thing, the damage, it really doesn't look bad once you get outside of this driver rear corner. And even this, the tub, it's split apart, but that's not my first rodeo. I've fixed a couple of those on C6s. They're just bonded together. If they're bonded together from the factory, that means we can rebond them together. It's not that big of a deal. Or at least it's not that big of a deal to me. But if you're an insurance company, specifically the one that totaled this car, it's a huge deal. You can't just put it back together with a couple clamps and some glue like I would. You have to replace this whole thing. So anytime this rear tub's damaged, it's pretty much an automatic total. One bit of unfortunate news here is I did get the lower rocker panel as well. Pretty much everything on these cars unbolts except this. This is something that's bonded to the chassis. So just like that rear tub, we'd probably have to fiberglass that back together. But realistically, none of this is the biggest deal in the world as long as the frame rail section that sits just inside there didn't get damaged, which of course we're not really going to be able to tell while looking at it in a parking lot.
The heavy damage is isolated to this driver's side, but as you continue around to the back, there's a lot of cosmetic damage, which is very unfortunate given the color of this car.
Yeah, I want to buy one of these specifically because it's this color. It's kind of a shame that you have to repaint pretty much the whole thing. The rear bumper, that needs body work and paint. The rear quarter panel, that's a heavy scratch that maybe in some way, shape, or form could get buffed out. It's got some bad PPF on the rocker area. There's not much on this car that's in good shape. Well, they pull eyelids off of it.
I guess, I mean, it looks like it might clean off with just some adhesive remover, but this actually might have damaged the lens.
Very possible, which is probably why it's marked by insurance. And then for whatever reason, don't ask me why, because I think they look cool, they pulled off the Grand Sport stripes, but didn't remove the adhesive. What do you got up here?
There's even insurance markings on the wheel. I don't know if this is for minor curb rash or maybe an apparent bend. It doesn't look too bad to the naked eye, but it just adds to everything that we just talked about on the car.
Of the wheels, the only one there's real visible damage on is the one that's, well, sitting towed out 10 degrees and cambered out another 20. That's broken, that's cracked. That would definitely need to be replaced. In fact, I'm gonna assume the entire rear driver suspension would have to be replaced, but I'm honestly not too worried about that. That's easy. Now, all the negatives we went over, they're not gonna matter, hopefully at least, because this thing's supposed to run. No jump box, nothing, starts right up. Of course, the first thing we're looking at anytime we start a car at the auction, oil pressure. It's perfectly fine here, 39,000 miles. Everything looks great in here. Hold on. Theft attempted. I assume that's just because the wreck, I don't know. Maybe this got stolen. I suppose it's possible. There is one thing that doesn't make a lot of sense though. 39,000 miles in the interior. It's beat. The window switches, they're trashed. The seat bolster, trashed. Check this out. I think we got it in track mode now. Head on back there. Oh, did you hear it get louder?
Oh, I heard it change.
After hearing it like that, I wanted even more. It tends to happen that way at auction. Things can be junk, beat, no matter what. It all goes out the window when you start it up in here running fine. Now, trust me, guys, I absolutely hate to bring common sense into this, but we are gonna have to be really careful about what we pay for this one. As awesome as this thing is, as bad as I want it, it's still a pretty rough car. It's a Grand Sport, not a Z06. These things do really well at the auction, or really well for the auction, I guess I should say. Not really well if you're looking to buy one cheap. They pull a ton of money, and unlike some cars, we actually have to be smart once in a while. We can't pay a ton of money for this thing, maybe $20,000, but I do suspect that it goes just a bit higher. Guys, we looked at a ton of vets today, some fixable, some definitely not. Go down in the comments, let us know which one you want to see us buy. Adios. See you. It genuinely looks like you just got ran over by this thing. Anyway, talking about fixer C6 ZR, well, it's not a ZR1. They're not a C6 either. We got power now, there's no damage to the front end. Just gotta shove the camera in your ass. No. You don't have to film me getting up. Either way, the issues with this car.
I agree. Things are looking up a little bit. Aside from a side mark.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Probably drove the market up by 10% on it by saying that, but
maybe that's what caused the damage. Somebody wrecked it.
No, that was stupid. Yeah, damn, the mic wasn't even facing the right way. That was a good one, yeah.